The night was silent, but the silence was not empty. The stars above the abandoned outpost shone like frozen fire, and the wind carried only the sound of metal doors rattling in the distance. Everyone said no one should stay here after dark. Everyone whispered that the Queen walked here, the untouchable Queen, the Nightmare Queen, and yet one man stayed. His name was Daniel Carter, a scientist soldier of Earthfleet. Others called him reckless, foolish, or maybe even cursed, but Daniel was curious, and curiosity had kept him alive when others died. He had heard the stories of the Alien Queen, 8 feet tall, skin dark as obsidian, eyes glowing like molten silver. They said she ruled her people from the shadows, never seen, never touched, never defeated. Some said even a glance into her eyes could burn a man's soul. Others claimed her voice was poison, sweet and deadly. But Daniel wanted to see the truth. Inside the broken outpost, lights flickered. He moved slowly, boots echoing on the cold floor. His scanner beeped once, then went dead. The machine could not read what was coming. And then he felt it, an unseen weight pressing against his chest. It was not sound, it was not wind, it was her presence. From the shadows she stepped forward, 8 feet tall, a figure of impossible grace and terror. Her crown was not metal but bone growing from her own body. Her hair shimmered like liquid steel, moving though no air touched it. Her eyes locked on him, and in that moment Daniel felt like the smallest creature in the universe. But he did not run. The Queen tilted her head. Curious, almost amused, no soldier before had dared to stand so close. No human had ever walked into her territory alone. Daniel's heart raced, but he kept his voice steady. "You're real," he whispered. The Queen's lips curved into something like a smile, but it was not warm. Her voice came low, smooth, and heavy with command. "You should not be here." The walls trembled with her words. Daniel almost fell to his knees, but he held himself upright. Every instinct screamed at him to flee, but his mind screamed louder. Here she was, the most feared being in the galaxy, and she was flesh, she was blood. And blood could be studied slowly, carefully. He let his hand brush against the scanner hidden in his belt. It was not a weapon. It was a thief, a tool designed to capture the smallest drop of DNA. The Queen stepped closer, and her shadow swallowed him whole. Her hand, long and sharp like a blade, touched his chest for just a second. It felt like fire and ice together, burning and freezing at once, but instead of killing him, she pulled back as if puzzled. "Strange," she murmured. "You do not break." Daniel's throat was dry, but he forced a weak smile. "Maybe I'm stronger than I look." The Queen studied him, eyes narrowing. Then she turned away, walking deeper into the ruins. Her cloak dragged across the ground like smoke. For a moment, Daniel thought she was gone, but her presence lingered like a storm waiting to strike. When the shadows covered her, Daniel moved fast. His scanner beeped once, quiet as a heartbeat, and on his glove was a single drop of glowing liquid. Her blood. He stared at it frozen. It pulsed faintly, alive, aware, as if it knew it had been stolen. He closed his fist around it, hiding the glow. His pulse thundered in his ears. He had done it. He had touched the untouchable. He had taken what no human had ever dared. But the Queen's voice rolled back through the ruins, cold, soft, and terrifying. "You will regret this," she whispered from the dark. Daniel's breath caught. He turned, but she was nowhere to be seen. Only the echo of her promise remained, and the glowing drop of blood in his hand. Far above, the stars kept their silent watch, and Daniel knew the universe had changed. Something ancient, something forbidden, now lived in his pocket, and the Queen would come for it. He did not know when, he did not know how, but one truth filled his mind. This was not just science anymore, this was survival. The laboratory was silent except for the sound of one man's heartbeat. Daniel Carter sat in the dark, staring at the vial in front of him inside the glass. A single drop of alien blood glowed faintly, like a piece of a star trapped in liquid. It pulsed slowly, almost like it was breathing. Daniel's hands shook, not from fear but from the weight of discovery. This was not just blood, this was power, he whispered to himself. The blood of a queen. The words echoed in his empty lab. No other human had seen it, no other human had touched it. He should have destroyed it, burned it, erased all proof. But Daniel was not like the others, he was curious. And curiosity had already led him into danger once. Slowly, he placed the vial into the scanner. The machine whirred, lights flickering across its glass surface. At first, it showed nothing but chaos. lines of broken codes and unreadable patterns. The machine beeped in confusion. Then the chaos began to arrange itself. Symbols, shapes, lines that were too perfect. It was not just DNA, it was something else. Daniel leaned closer, eyes wide. "It's a code," he breathed. The blood was not only alive, it carried instructions, a language hidden inside. Each strand of DNA twisted not like a ladder, but like a song. Patterns repeated like verses, sharp, precise, alien, and when the scanner reached its limit, the machine sparked, smoke rising from its circuits. Daniel yanked the plug out, coughing as the smell of burning wires filled the room. When the smoke cleared, the vial still pulsed faintly. Untouched, Daniel stared at it, his mind racing. This was not blood meant for human eyes. This was a secret of her kind, guarded for centuries, and now it was his. He poured a drop onto a glass slide and slipped it under the microscope. What he saw made his stomach twist. The cells moved, reshaping themselves. Not like human blood, not like any known species. These cells built themselves into patterns, little spirals, tiny structures that connected and then broke apart. It was like the blood was alive with thought. Watching, waiting, listening, then the whispers began, at first soft, almost like wind in the vents, then louder, rising inside his skull, voices speaking words he could not understand. Not English, not any language he knew. The whispers carried rhythm, almost like chanting. He pressed his hands to his ears, but it did not stop. The sound was not outside, it was inside. "Coming from the blood, stop it," Daniel hissed, backing away from the microscope. But the whispers followed, curling into his thoughts. Flashes of silver eyes, bone crowns, and burning cities filled his mind. He saw battles he never fought, memories that were not his own. For a moment he felt her gaze again. The weight of her presence, the queen, was not gone. She was inside the blood, she was inside him. His body shook as he collapsed against the desk. Sweat poured down his face, his veins burned, glowing faintly for only a second before dimming again. Daniel gasped, his chest rising and falling. He had touched something that was never meant to be touched. But still his eyes glowed with determination. "I can learn this," he whispered. "I can control this." The lab door slammed open. Two fellow scientists stood in shock as they saw the glowing vial on his desk. "Daniel," one shouted, "what have you done?" He held up his hands quickly, but they backed away in fear. "That's her blood," the other said, eyes wide. "You're playing with fire." "You fool," Daniel's voice was steady, though his body trembled. "This is more than blood. This is knowledge. It will kill you," the first scientist barked. "Destroy it before it destroys us all." Daniel shook his head slowly. "No. This is the future." The others exchanged looks of terror. They turned and fled, leaving him alone in the humming lab. Daniel knew they would report him, but he didn't care. The blood was his, and only he could unlock its secrets. He sat again, staring at the vial. The whispers quieted for a moment, as if waiting. He pulled a small blade from the drawer. His hand hovered over his skin. Shaking, then, with one quick motion, he cut the tip of his finger. A drop of human blood fell into the vial. The two drops touched, the human and the alien, and the world seemed to stop breathing. The vial glowed so bright that Daniel shielded his eyes. The liquid inside twisted, coiling around itself like a living serpent. It clung to his drop of blood and consumed it. Then it pulsed violently, cracking the glass. Daniel grabbed it in panic, but the shards cut into his hand. The glowing liquid slipped through the wound and sank into his veins. He fell to the ground, his body convulsing. Every nerve burned, every muscle screamed. His eyes rolled back as visions flooded him again. The queen, the throne, the endless war, her loneliness, her rage, and her voice whispering in his head. "You cannot run from me," Daniel gasped, his body glowing faintly. Then the light faded, leaving only silence. On the floor he lay trembling. His hand pressed to his chest. He was no longer just a man. Her blood and his blood had joined, and nothing in the galaxy could undo it. The alarm screamed across the empty lab. Red lights flashed, throwing long shadows across the walls. Daniel Carter lay on the floor, gasping for air. His veins glowed faintly like burning wires under his skin. The alien blood was inside him now, twisting, reshaping, rewriting. And it was not silent, it was speaking. The whispers had returned. But they were no longer faint. They were sharp, clear, and merciless voices of war. Voices of command, voices of memory. Daniel gripped his head, pressing his palms against his ears, but it was useless. The voices were not outside, they were inside. Inside his mind, inside his blood. Flashes of visions burned behind his eyes. He saw a throne of bone and steel. He saw soldiers kneeling in endless rows. He saw the queen herself, tall and terrible, sitting in silence while the galaxy bowed. Then the vision shifted. Her rage, her loneliness, her chains of power. He felt her pain, heavy and ancient. And for the first time, Daniel understood. She was not only feared, she was trapped. His chest heaved as he sat up, his hands trembling. He reached for the desk, but his grip crushed the edge of the steel surface like it was paper. Daniel froze, staring at the bent metal in his palm. Something had changed. His strength was no longer human. The alarms grew louder, and footsteps echoed in the hall. Security forces rushed into the lab, rifles raised. "Hands where we can see them," one shouted. Daniel lifted his hands slowly, but the glow in his veins made them step back in fear. "He's infected," another soldier muttered. "No," Daniel said, his voice shaking but stronger than before. "I'm alive." The soldiers hesitated, unsure. Then the air grew heavy. Everyone felt it, an invisible weight pressing down on the room. The lights flickered, the walls trembled, and Daniel knew what it was. She had awakened. The queen's presence filled his mind like a storm. Her voice cut through the chaos, cold and sharp. "You dared," she whispered inside his skull. "You took what was mine." Daniel's teeth clenched, his body shaking under her power. Images of her silver eyes blazed in his head. She was searching for him, she knew. The soldiers shouted, confused, some dropping their weapons as the invisible pressure grew stronger. Then the lights exploded in a shower of sparks. Darkness swallowed the lab. In that darkness, Daniel saw her clearly, not with his eyes, but with his mind. The queen stood in a vast chamber, her crown of bone glowing faintly. Her gaze turned as if she could see through worlds, and she found him. "You cannot hide," her voice thundered in his head. Daniel staggered, gripping the wall. "I don't want to hide," he whispered. Her silence answered louder than any roar. The soldiers tried to drag him out, but the floor cracked beneath them. Energy surged through Daniel's body. Uncontrolled, a shockwave burst outward, hurling men across the room like dolls. Sparks rained from the ceiling as systems collapsed. Daniel fell to his knees, his body glowing again. His pulse beat like thunder, and with every beat, he felt her closer. Then silence. The lab was destroyed. The soldiers unconscious, the machines dead. Only Daniel remained awake, kneeling in the rubble. And then her voice whispered once more, softer this time. "You are mine now." Daniel shook his head, forcing himself to stand. "No," he muttered. "I'm not yours. I'm yours and mine." The blood inside him pulsed at his words. Almost agreeing, the queen hissed in anger, her presence pulling back like claws scraping across his mind. And Daniel knew what that meant. She would not leave him alive. She would come for him. He stumbled out into the night, the ruined outpost burning behind him. Above the sky, shadows moved, massive ships. Dark and silent, the queen's army was awake. They were coming. Daniel's hands shook, but his eyes burned with determination. He was not just human anymore. Her blood had awakened something inside him. Strength, vision, and something else. Connection. He was tied to her now. Her pain was his. Her memories were his, and maybe, just maybe, her power could be his too, but every gift carried a price. As he looked at the burning sky, Daniel realized the truth. This was no longer a secret, this was a war. The queen wanted her blood back, and she would tear apart worlds to claim it. Daniel clenched his fists, the glow fading slowly from his veins. He whispered to himself, steady and cold, "If she's coming for me, then I'll be ready." Far away, on her throne of bone, the queen opened her eyes. Her army bowed in silence, waiting for her command. And with a voice that shook the halls of her empire, she spoke one order: find him, alive. The hunt had begun, and the man who had stolen her blood was no longer just a man. He was the awakening, the spark of a fire that would set the galaxy ablaze. The sky over Earth trembled. At first it looked like a storm, dark clouds spreading across the horizon. But no storm moved with such perfect silence. No storm carried the shadow of ships. Thousands of alien war vessels drifted down from the stars. Black and endless, people filled the streets, pointing upward in terror. They thought the invasion had begun. But it was worse than that. They had come for one man. Daniel Carter stood on the rooftop of a ruined tower. His chest heavy, he could feel them before he saw them. The queen's army, her children, her hunters, their minds pressed against his like knives, searching, sniffing, pulling. They weren't here for Earth. They were here for him. The blood in his veins burned with every heartbeat. whispering, "Run." Military fighters launched into the air, streaks of fire cutting across the night. Missiles screamed, explosions lit the sky. But the alien ships did not fall. Energy shields flared like glass, unbroken. With a single pulse of light, the alien fleet answered. Entire squadrons of jets dissolved into dust. Panic spread across the cities. This was not war, it was slaughter. Daniel turned away, gripping the railing until it bent under his hands. "This is my fault," he whispered. He could feel her searching, her voice echoing faintly in his mind. "You cannot escape me." He clenched his teeth. If he stayed hidden, Earth would burn. If he surrendered, he would die, but deep in his veins, something told him he was not powerless. He leapt down the stairwell, boots slamming on the cracked concrete. Civilians ran past him, screaming, carrying children, dragging suitcases. Some stopped and stared as his veins flickered with faint light. "Is he one of them?" someone shouted. Daniel pushed forward. Ignoring the voices, he had no time to explain. The Queen's soldiers were already here. The ground shook, from the smoke rose towering figures. Alien warriors clad in armor that gleamed like black glass, 8 feet tall with weapons forged from living metal. Their eyes glowed silver, the same as hers. They scanned the crowd, and people scattered like insects before fire. One pointed at Daniel, its voice deep and sharp. "There! The blood thief!" Daniel's pulse raced, his body moved before his mind could think. The first soldier lunged, its blade slicing down. Daniel caught it with his bare hand. The force cracked the ground beneath them. For a heartbeat, both froze, staring at the impossible. Then Daniel shoved forward, and the alien was hurled across the street like a rag doll, crashing into a wall of stone. Gasps filled the air. The humans who had doubted now saw the truth. He was not ordinary anymore. But the victory was short. More soldiers closed in, a dozen, then 2 dozen, their armor hissing with power. Daniel's chest burned, his arms shook. He didn't know if he could survive this, but he had no choice. He ran, drawing them away from the fleeing crowds, through alleys, across broken highways, into the ruins of an old stadium. The aliens followed, relentless, their blades humming with deadly light. Daniel stopped in the center of the empty field, his breath heavy. He raised his hands, fists clenched. "Come on," he growled. They attacked all at once. Blades struck, guns fired, the air filled with screams of metal and fire. Daniel dodged, blocked, struck back. His body moved with inhuman speed. Every strike fueled by the alien blood. He broke armor, shattered weapons, tore through soldiers, but for every one that fell, 3 more replaced it, and above, the ships circled like vultures as he fought. Flashes of vision burned his mind. The Queen's eyes watching him, her voice whispering, "You fight well, little thief, but you cannot win." Daniel roared, forcing her voice out. He slammed his fists into the ground, and a shockwave of energy erupted from him. The stadium cracked. Alien warriors thrown back in all directions. For a moment, silence, then the shadows moved. She was here. From the largest ship above, a beam of silver light descended. The ground split as a figure stepped into the world. 8 feet tall, cloaked in smoke and bone. Her presence swallowed the air. Crushing every sound, the Queen had arrived. Daniel froze, his chest heaving. Their eyes locked across the ruins, her gaze pierced him, her voice filling the minds of everyone nearby. "This world does not matter," she said, cold and perfect. "Only he matters," humans screamed and ran. Aliens dropped to their knees in worship. And Daniel stood alone, his fists clenched, his blood burning. The Queen stepped closer, the earth trembling beneath her. "You carry what belongs to me," she said. Her voice low and sharp, Daniel's heart thundered. But he forced his words through clenched teeth. "No," he said. "It belongs to us both now." The Queen's silver eyes narrowed. The war was no longer about worlds. It was about 2 beings bound by blood, 1 human, 1 queen, and the battle for survival had only begun. The ruined city was silent. Ash drifted through the broken streets like gray snow. The air burned with smoke from collapsed towers, and in the middle of the destruction stood 2 giants. Daniel Carter, blood glowing faintly in his veins, and the alien queen, tall and terrible, her crown of bone shining like pale fire. The world around them faded. The armies had stopped. Humans hid in shadows. Aliens knelt in silence. This was no longer a war of fleets. This was a duel of blood. The Queen's silver eyes fixed on him, unblinking. "You have stolen what cannot be stolen," she said. Her voice carried through the ruins like a storm. "You carry me inside you, and yet you dare to resist." Daniel's fists clenched. I didn't steal, he said, his voice low. I survived. The queen tilted her head. Curious and cold, then she raised one hand. The air twisted, crushing around him. Invisible pressure forced Daniel to his knees. His bones creaked, his chest screamed, but he did not break instead. The glow in his veins grew brighter. He pushed against her will, and the ground cracked beneath him. I'm not yours, he growled, standing back up. Her eyes narrowed. In a flash, she moved faster than human sight. Her blade-like arms slashed through the air. Daniel raised his arm to block. Metal screeched as her strike met his skin. The force threw him across the street. Crashing into stone, dust rose, rubble fell. But Daniel rose again, shaking. Blood dripped from his lip, but he smiled. You're strong, he said, but so am I. The queen's cloak flared as she stepped closer. Her every movement was perfect, deadly, unstoppable, Daniel charged, his fists blazing with strange light. They clashed in the center of the ruins, her strikes sharp and precise, his blows raw and furious. Every impact shook the ground. Every collision of flesh and bone echoed like thunder. But the duel was more than flesh. It was mind against mind. Every strike carried visions. When her blade touched his arm, he saw a memory of her throne, her endless years of silence. When his fist struck her side, she saw a memory of Earth, his childhood, his laughter. Their minds collided as much as their bodies, each learning the other with every wound. The queen hissed, her silver eyes burning. You are nothing, she spat. Daniel staggered but did not fall. Then why do I see your pain? He shouted back for just a heartbeat. Her mask cracked, and in her silence Daniel saw the truth. Her strength was not just power, it was chains. She had been bound to it for centuries, never free, never touched, never human. Daniel's blood pulsed. Burning with fire, he lunged forward, catching her wrist. The glow of his veins spread into her skin. For the first time she flinched. Her eyes widened as her own strength recoiled. What are you doing? She demanded. Daniel's grip tightened. I'm showing you, he said, that you don't have to be alone. The world around them trembled. Their blood connected. A wave of light burst outward, shattering glass, bending metal. For a moment the queen froze. Vision struck her, and she saw herself standing not as a ruler but as a person. She saw laughter, warmth, connection, things she had lost long ago. Her chest heaved. Her perfect control faltered. She ripped free, stumbling back. Her soldiers gasped. Never having seen their queen falter, her voice shook. Not with rage, but with something older. Fear. You're rewriting me. Daniel stood tall, bruised and bleeding, his breath heavy. Not rewriting, he said. Reminding. The queen's gaze locked on him. Silver fire swirling for a moment, neither moved. The armies waited in silence. And then she struck again, her fury returning. Their battle raged once more, mind and flesh colliding, but something had changed. Her strikes carried hesitation, her power trembled. And Daniel knew he had touched something deeper. Finally, he landed a blow that sent her crashing into the ruins of a broken tower. The dust cleared and she rose slowly, her cloak torn. Her crown cracked, she stared at him, her chest rising and falling. But she did not finish the fight. Instead, her voice dropped low, almost a whisper. You could have killed me. Daniel wiped blood from his mouth, his glow fading. But I didn't, he said. The queen studied him for a long moment. Then, for the first time in centuries, she lowered her blade. You are either the end of me, she whispered, or my beginning. The wind carried her words across the silent battlefield. Aliens and humans alike held their breath, and Daniel knew the duel was not truly over. It had only begun. The battlefield was silent. Dust floated in the air, glowing faintly in the ruined city lights. Daniel Carter stood with his fists clenched, his chest heaving, his blood still burning with alien fire. And across from him stood the queen, her cloak torn, her bone crown cracked, her silver eyes locked on him. For the first time she looked uncertain. The untouchable queen who had ruled her empire for centuries, who had crushed worlds with a thought, now stood trembling not with weakness but with something greater, change. Her soldiers stared in disbelief. Their queen had never faltered, never bled, never lowered her blade, and yet here she was, her gaze softened by the human who carried her blood. They whispered among themselves, their voices sharp and fearful. Impure, one hissed. She is broken, said another. They looked at her not with worship but with suspicion. The queen straightened, her voice echoing across the ruins. Do not fear, she commanded, though her tone wavered. But her people no longer obeyed so easily. They had seen the glow of human blood inside her. They had seen her hesitate, and in their eyes hesitation was betrayal. Daniel stepped forward, his body aching but strong. "You feel it too," he said softly. "The bond. The blood is not a curse, it's freedom." The queen's silver eyes narrowed, but she did not strike. Instead, she pressed a hand against her chest. Her veins glowed faintly, not pure silver anymore, but streaked with human fire. She gasped as pain and light ripped through her body. Her soldiers recoiled, shocked. The ground shook as her scream echoed. The bone crown on her head cracked further, pieces falling to the ground. Her armor split apart as her body twisted under the strain. Daniel rushed to her side, catching her before she fell. Her weight was heavy, her skin burning against his touch, but he held her. "You're changing," he whispered. She looked at him, her voice trembling. "You did this." Her soldiers stepped forward, weapons raised. "Queen, stop this!" one shouted, but she could not stop it. The rewriting had begun. Her DNA, once perfect and eternal, was now shifting. Blending with Daniel's blood, rewriting centuries of chains, she was no longer pure alien, no longer the untouchable queen. She was something new. Her scream ended in silence. Her chest rose and fell, her breath heavy. When she opened her eyes again, they no longer shone with endless silver. Now they carried streaks of human warmth. For the first time, her gaze looked alive. Not distant, not frozen, alive. The soldiers dropped to their knees in shock. Some whispered prayers, others cursed. One raised his blade, shouting, "She is no longer our queen." The army roared, half in loyalty, half in rebellion, the air filled with chaos. Her own empire was tearing itself apart. Daniel pulled her close, his voice sharp. "They'll kill you if you stay like this." She looked at him, her lips curling into something between pain and defiance. "Let them try," she whispered. But even as she spoke, her strength faltered again. The rewriting was not just physical. It was in her mind, in her spirit. Every chain that had bound her for centuries was breaking, and freedom, sharp and terrifying, rushed in to fill the void. The army surged forward, half to defend her, half to strike her down. Blades clashed, energy bolts lit the night. The queen staggered, unable to command them. Her voice no longer carried absolute power. For the first time, her people did not obey. They fought each other, loyalists against rebels. The battlefield burned with betrayal. Daniel dragged her into the ruins, shielding her from the storm. She gripped his arm, her strength fading. Why would you do this?" she asked, her voice weak. Daniel looked at her, his jaw tight. "Because no one deserves chains, not even you." Her breath shook. She had been feared for so long, worshipped and hated, but never understood now. A single human had changed her. She hated him for it, and yet, deep inside, she felt something else, relief. Above them, the sky thundered as more alien ships descended. The Empire would not forgive this. The news would spread. Their queen was no longer untouchable, no longer pure. She had been rewritten, and in the eyes of her people, rewritten meant unworthy. Daniel held her as the city burned. The glow in his veins matched the glow in hers. They were bound now, not just by blood, but by survival. The galaxy itself would turn against them. But for the first time, she was not alone, and for the first time, he was not powerless. Her voice broke the silence, low and trembling. "They will hunt us both." Daniel nodded, his eyes hard. "Then let them," he said. "We'll fight together." The queen looked at him for a long moment, and though her face was still sharp, still terrifying, her eyes carried something new. A spark of trust, fragile but real. The rewritten queen rose to her feet. Her crown broken, her body scarred, her power changed. Behind her, the battlefield raged on, but in that moment, the future of two species shifted. The queen was no longer untouchable, and the human who had rewritten her DNA now stood as her only ally. The skies burned red. Alien warships filled the heavens above Earth, their shadows stretching across oceans and mountains. Cities trembled as fire rained down. But this was not conquest, it was execution. The Empire had judged its queen. She was no longer pure, no longer untouchable. She was rewritten, and for that she had to die, alongside the human who had changed her. Daniel Carter stood on the shattered rooftop of a command center, his veins still glowing faintly, his body scarred from battles he should not have survived. Beside him stood the queen, taller, broken crown still clinging to her head, her silver eyes streaked with human warmth. Her people once worshipped her, but now fleets circled above. Millions of her own soldiers prepared to destroy her. The humans gathered their forces too, fighters, tanks, missiles, weapons that had never been tested against alien steel. The armies of Earth looked small, fragile against the endless fleet. Daniel saw the fear in their faces, but he also saw the fire. Humanity had always been small compared to the galaxy. But humans had something the Empire never understood: the will to fight even when hope was gone. The Queen turned to him, her voice heavy. "They will not stop until we are ashes," Daniel nodded. His jaw tight. "Then we don't give them ashes," he said. "We give them a reason to fear us." The Queen studied him. Her body still trembled from the rewriting. Her strength no longer absolute, yet she had never felt so alive. She placed her hand on his. Alien fire met human warmth. Their blood pulsed together, one rhythm. And something greater awoke above. The Empire unleashed its fury. Warships fired beams that split the sky. Cities cracked, oceans boiled, human forces struck back, missiles streaking upward like desperate sparks. Most were destroyed in mid-air. But some found their mark. Ships exploded, fragments falling like stars. It was not enough, but it was something. The Queen raised her arms, her voice echoing across the battlefield. Not only in sound, but in thought. Every human soldier felt her words inside their minds. "Do not fear," she said, "you are not alone." And for the first time, the Queen of Shadows fought not to rule, but to defend. Alien warriors dropped from the sky, black armor gleaming. Daniel charged to meet them. His fists glowed. His strikes cracked steel. He fought not as a man, but as something more. Every time he faltered, he felt her strength steady him. Every time she staggered, she felt his resolve pull her back. Together they were unstoppable. Still, the Empire's numbers were endless. For every enemy that fell, 10 more took its place. The ground burned. The air filled with screams and smoke. Earth itself seemed ready to break. Daniel looked up at the largest ship, the flagship. He felt her presence inside it. Not the rewritten Queen beside him, but the old Queen. The version of her locked in DNA and chains of memory. Her empire still carried her past self, and to win, they had to destroy it. He grabbed her hand, pulling her close. "We end this at the source," he said. Her silver eyes burned. "The flagship," she whispered. Daniel nodded. Together, they launched upward in a blaze of light. Her power wrapped around them. His blood ignited like fire. Through the storm of enemy fire, through the endless fleets, they tore a path straight to the heart of the Empire. The flagship loomed before them, a fortress of black steel and bone. Cannons turned, energy flared, but the Queen's voice rang across the fleet. "Stand down," she commanded. For a moment, silence, and then defiance. The ships fired anyway. Her people had truly turned against her. Daniel roared, unleashing a shockwave of energy that shattered the nearest guns. The Queen followed, her power cutting a hole through the flagship's shields. Together they crashed inside. Corridors filled with alien soldiers closed in, but none could stand against them. Daniel struck with fury, the Queen with precision, and at last they reached the core. The heart of the ship glowed with living energy, and inside it pulsed the code of her old self. The chains, the throne, the curse that had bound her. Daniel staggered, feeling its weight in his blood. "It's her," he gasped. The Queen stepped forward, her face pale. "It's me," she whispered. The Empire had trapped her essence here, an eternal prison to keep her pure, untouchable, unbroken. Daniel looked at her, his voice steady. "Then break it." Her hands shook, fear flickering across her perfect face. "If I destroy this, I destroy who I was," she said. Daniel gripped her shoulders, his eyes burning. "Then you finally become who you are." She closed her eyes. For centuries she had ruled with chains. Now for the first time she chose freedom. Her power surged, light bursting from her veins. Daniel's fire joined hers. Together they struck the core. It screamed, twisting, shattering. The old Queen burned away, and the rewritten Queen rose in her place. The flagship exploded in a storm of light. Across the sky the Empire's fleet faltered. Without the old code, without the old chains, their power broke, ships tumbled, soldiers collapsed. The war ended not with conquest, but with liberation. Daniel and the Queen drifted back to Earth, their bodies scarred, their strength nearly gone. But when they touched the ground, humans and rebels alike stared in silence. The Queen was no longer untouchable, and the human was no longer alone. Together they had rewritten more than DNA. They had rewritten destiny. The Queen's voice rang across the broken battlefield. Not ruler, not slave, not God, she said, her silver eyes blazing with human fire. From this day forward, I fight with you, not above you. Daniel stood beside her, his hand still in hers, and for the first time in history, human and alien stood as one. The galaxy would never forget this day. The day a queen was rewritten, and a single human turned survival into victory.